So on the back end of our tutorial about how to make textures coming out of a 3D CC program like Maya, Blender, or C4D or otherwise, I'm going to now take the textured asset into Unity and show you how to light it. This was part of that same line of questioning. We've gotten this far. Now how do we make it look good? So this is where we left off in the last tutorial. For those of you that don't remember, we made a very, very simple window with concrete wall. I'm going to go back into the painting tool just to remind those that were following along what that looked like. The one thing that we want to do that we haven't yet from here is just export our textures officially. I showed how to do it, but didn't really walk through. I didn't do it myself in that tutorial. So what I want to do is Unity HD Render Pipeline Metallic Standard would be perfect for me. It's going to come with a base, emissive, mask, and normal map for each of these. The standard surface I don't really care about. The Blinn and Lambert, I believe, are the two that I actually painted within. So I'm going to hit export. And the export should be done. Let's see where they all went. And let's see. So it's looking for a folder. So let's just copy this folder name. Open up Windows and check out this folder. So these textures have all exported. This is 3 textures with 3 different maps. So 3 materials with 3 different textures, I guess is another way to say it. It looks like it did not kick out an emissive because I did not paint emissive on anything. So we are good to go. I have my textures. The next thing we want to do is pull in Unity. So I have a Unity scene here and I'm pretty happy with it. We want to pull in the model and the textures. If we want to do this properly, we're going to create folder and call this models. Sometimes you'll do underscore models, so it always returns at the beginning, which is probably not a bad idea. But for now, we're just going to do models and textures. So inside of models, I want to find the model that I've created previously. And let's see, I'm going into my documents right now, going into test and going into the window.fbx, and I'm just going to pull that straight in. So here comes the FBX. Looks fine, but looks pretty teeny tiny. So I think I want to up this to maybe 100 by 100 by 100. I don't know if that's going to be ridiculous. I guess that does look a little ridiculous, but let's just run with it and see what happens. So I'm assuming from looking at the back here that this is the back and this is the front. I'm just going to take our main camera, or rather our sun, and light this from the direction that I'm looking at it, just so I can see all the textures come in. Next thing I want to do is grab these textures and pull them in over here. And the normal maps, I'm going to control click each of the normal maps and turn these in the inspector to normal. So we want to go up to the default texture type, just hit apply. It's going to kind of recompute how Unity is looking at them. Within window, if I want to go into the prefab itself, go to materials. I'm going to come over here, and this is a little bit in the weeds, but I'm just going to create one more folder that is materials. And I'm going to create a wood. Where are you? There you are. Wood, or wad. I guess I will add the O in just a second. And wall. Come back down here and add that one O. And now theoretically, when I come in here, I go to models, I select the prefab. I'm going to lock this so it doesn't move around on me as I'm clicking other things. And I'm going to go into materials and drag wood up to Blinn, I believe. and wall to Lambert 2. And just to make sure that that is correct, so I've unchecked the lock and it said, wait a second, you haven't saved this or you haven't hit apply. So I need to hit save, which should apply those. And now that I'm looking at wood, if I change this to red, so I inverted them. I'm just doing this so that I can see what I'm doing. So wall needs to go to the opposite. So let's go back to our prefab, models, prefab, lock this again, just so we're not having it switch around on us. Go back into materials and drag wall to wood and wood to wall. And apply. Okay, I think that looks good then. We know that our materials are lined up properly. Now we can go into each of these, unlock our inspector. Actually, I'm going to lock it back with wood here so that we can go into the textures and find wood. So I want that to be the base map. This will be the mask map, so I'm going to drag that onto mask. And this should be our normal. So I'm going to drag that into normal. Now the one thing I need to do is turn off the red, so I'm going back to white here in the main color because I don't need the mask anymore. And then let's go back into materials, grab wall, unlock, lock, assets, textures, and drag in the base map, the mask map, and the normal map. The last one we don't really care about because it's not facing us. Again, we need to get the green out of here, so we're going to take off the green tint. That looks perfectly fine to me. Next thing I want to do is just add in a couple of planes. I'm going to call this one floor. Bring it down. Scale it up. Pull it through just like that. And then what I'm likely going to do is Control-C, Control-V. Rotate this. I'm going to unlock so I can see my rotation. Pull that up there. And then I'm going to come down to where it overlaps. Control-C, Control-V. Scale this in. And I'm essentially just making a super basic wall. This is definitely not best practice, but it'll work for now. It'll get us through what I'm trying to do, which is really just get some light coming through this asset that we made. I think that the audience is more than adept enough at this pipeline to extrapolate how you would take this and use this for a pipeline where all the walls are textured and properly modeled, etc. We go ahead and shrink this down, pull that down here. And now we're looking at a very sloppy but perfectly fine wall with wood. So the sky and fog volume is in here, which has some overrides for fog, exposure, physically based sky, and visual environment. I'm just going to turn those off. I, in fact, don't really want the sky and fog volume. I want to create my own. So let's go into volume, global volume, create a new profile as we've done in previous tutorial videos. I want to do fog, where I'm going to enable it and pull the attenuation quite short. Let's go even shorter. And I want to add in a light that will be a spotlight. Pull that up, pull up the intensity. Cool. I want to turn off the sun and just have on our spotlight. So one of the things I want to do is that I'm not seeing the spotlight hit anything, so I'm going to turn off our global volume briefly. Make sure that something is working. Let's go to light, point, and let's see what a point light does. I imagine this is just far too scaled up. That's exactly what it is. So just to make sure that we don't have any issues with scale, I'm going to take all of these, put them in an empty game object for scene, and I'm going to scale them all down together, which should maintain the offsets of everything. So if I scale down the scene to, that's probably fine. All right, so I'm happier with our scale. We don't really need to blow out these lights just to get them to show up at all. And I'm happy with that to some degree. I'm going to, and for those of you that haven't watched my lighting video, you can adjust your lighting settings from reticles here on the light in 3D, or you can do it from different panels up here. So like the outer angle, I could scale up here, or I could scale up at the edge, but I won't waste too much time today covering that since we already have in a previous vid. All right, so I pulled it shorter. I think that's probably about what I'm happy with. Increase the intensity a little bit. Something like that. Let's see if we turn on global volume with the fog, what kind of effect we're going to get on our spotlight if we come down to volumetrics and turn the multiplier up. Let's see, visual environment we probably want. Let's just do a none for the sky. So now we can see that light coming through quite intensely. Actually dig that a lot. And I'm going to leave that there for right now. I'm going to pull this way back, which is nice because it's making it so we don't have to overlight everything. And that's looking pretty good. So let me come into window, lighting. And then I'm going to ensure that we have lighting settings. Okay, so I want to do a few things. One of which will be, I think, turning on Realtime GI. So I'm going to do that. And I think that already helps a lot. You can see how Realtime GI is working since it, as I cast the light lower and lower, it's going to let more and more light bounce and affect the walls around here. I think we're just going to do that and call it good. I'm going to come back to Inspector, and I think in Global Volume, I want to turn on Volumetric Fog. And in doing so, we're going to get something a lot more interesting. Gosh, that is super cool. Something like that. I think I want to turn this a little bit warmer, just so it looks a bit more realistic. If I wanted, I could put some trees or something out there, but maybe just for the time being, I will. Yeah, let's do that. That'll work. It's a little bit unrealistic, but let's just call that good for now. If I turn off gizmos, it's interesting. So what I want to do now is add just a little bit of life to this. I'm probably going to animate this slightly. So I'm going to create a empty object, call it timeline. Come over to window, sequencing, timeline, drag this down, create a new timeline with timeline selected in my hierarchy. Then I'm going to create an animation track, drag in my global, my spotlight. It's going to ask me if I want to create an animator. I'm going to say yes. Then I can hit record, select my spotlight, and go ahead and key the intensity. And let's say we're going in 4 seconds. This is going to be very gradual. Let's go down to 240. And actually, let me just see what it was here. That number, going to copy it and paste it in here at 240. And now theoretically, if I end my recording, I go to the Spotlight Animator. Everything looks good here. And then I go to the timeline and I say how I want to wrap it. I would like to loop it, which would mean it will fade from bright to dark to bright to dark. And that's how it should go. I want to pull my camera up and having it look appropriately at where I want to be looking at this window from. Pull this in just a little bit. Something like that. What I'm probably going to do is scale this up and pull it down just so that in my camera view, I have a wall that's going to run the length of what I need it to run. Come over to lighting and generate lighting very quickly. And now the wall blends again. If we look in our camera, I'm happier with that. It looks like we could go up a little bit, which I'm fine with. Let's bake our lighting one more time. Blend right back into the rest of it. Again, there are some creases because we're doing this very fast and sloppy. But if I go into game view now, we should be in a good spot. So let's say we want this to be 4K. Then I likely want to scale this out. Pretty happy with that, but the volumetrics are kind of falling by the wayside. So let me come back over to the Spotlight Inspector, pull up the multiplier just a little bit. We'll call that good. Last thing I want to do, looking at this through the game view, pretty happy with that. I think I may move it back just a little bit. It looks a little claustrophobic being that close to the window. And I'd like it a bit more interestingly framed. So now in the game, we can see some sky up here, but I'm not going to worry about it for right now. Let's say I want to come in here and do a create visual effects. Yes, visual effects graph. I'm going to call this particles, just to have something interesting in the scene that's kind of floating around. I'm going to double click on particles. Pull this off to the side. And in looking over here, what I believe I want to do is pull particles into the scene, bring them over to the appropriate place. And now what I want to do is just start editing. So, few very easy things I can do. First one is change out the default particle. So I'm just going to go to this main texture over here, type in particle, and select default particle. Then I want to, let's see what the blend mode will be for additive. That looks a bit better. I don't really want it to have this wild velocity upwards, so I'm going to turn off the set velocity, but I want to have some turbulence. Let's see if I can do that here in the update particle. And honestly, it's a little too wild. I also want to come over here and do a box. So we'll say set position box and have things flying around. So I've created the turbulence here in the update particle. I've created the original position out of a box. Let's turn the intensity way down to 0.1. Let's turn the scale down. We want to set size over life to a flat curve. And I want it to come down from 1 all the way to as small as it will go, really. So let's pull this way down. Now over here, that's starting to look pretty good. I think what I would like to do is take the box here and increase the scale. So let's go up in size to 222. Let's come back into game view. It's a little bit too high. It needs to really be in the path of the light. So I'm going to drag this box down and over. Come back into game. Too much. So now we want to come in here and dial down the amount, which is perfectly easy to do. I'm going to dial this down to maybe 4. Take the capacity down to 12. And now it's not something that's really bothersome. It's just something that adds a little bit of a nice pop of life. What I do want to do is set it so that it kind of fades in and out as if it's, here we go, set color over life. So there's already some manner of that set. I think I want to pull this further right so that it takes longer to fade in on both sides. Pull the right one left, the left one right. Now it's going to do a much nicer gradual fade out, just like they're doing a nice gradual fade in. So if I enable our shadow map inside of our spotlight, I'm going to hit enable. And now you're going to see that the shafts are actually kind of being carved up between the openings here. You can see it really clearly if I adjust the near plane. You can start to see how it starts to cut through there. So I think that's a really key setting, is to have your shadows on, of course. I just want to make sure that I called that out, as I didn't explicitly state it in the tutorial earlier. So I'm going to turn off real-time global illumination. I have baked GI in here. I went ahead and generated my lighting. Only thing to know here is that it's not going to do a damn thing unless your spotlight is set to mixed instead of real-time, which they are real-time by default. And I wasn't really intending to care about the shadows, given this was just a look dev project for the lights and the windows. But if this shadow edge bothers you, there are a couple ways to fix that. I believe one would be to create a material that's just a default material. Just going to call it default 2 in case there's any other default in there. Throw that on all of these things. And in this material, we're just going to make sure that the matte is set to 2-sided here. If you have double-sided off, you'll see that the edges don't work. If you have it on, you'll see that they do. Thanks, y'all. Appreciate you watching. Have a great day. And like, comment, and subscribe if you are so inclined. See ya.